The continuing popularity of Zutara speaks to a level of dissatisfaction with the canon pairing of Katara and Aang, but that can't be all it is, can it? Avatar fans don't only support Zutara because they're indifferent or antagonistic toward Katang, but because the pairing actively appeals to them. What makes the relationship between these two so dynamic and fascinating? What makes so many people want to see it become romantic? There are many reasons why people support the pairing of these two, and I will not pretend to list all of them. Even though I find the relationship between these two to be the most interesting in the show, an equal bond between two mature, thoughtful, grief-stricken people that grows as they learn more about each other and are willing to make sacrifices for each other. While I do not personally want to pass judgment on people for why they ship Zutara, or for why they ship anything as long as they're not obnoxious about it, I don't ship Zutara because of the initial hostility they have toward each other, or simply because they look good together. These, to me, are not particularly great reasons to support this pairing. So what are the best reasons, if you ask me, to ship these two? Let's investigate. First, we have to talk about who Zuko and Katara are as characters. The extent to which film criticism on the internet focuses on character arcs both annoys and delights me. Delights me because it's an accessible way to discuss character and bypass all the superficial sound and fury of a work. Annoys me because it is rather reductionist at times, reducing character work to something that's linear and extricable from the themes of the work as a whole, which of course it's not. That said, I think it is fairly uncontroversial to suggest that every decision a character makes and every action a character takes should augment the understanding the audience has of that character. Zuko's first positive interaction with a member of Team Avatar is with Aang, sure, but his connection with Katara is different. Aang is willing to give everyone a second chance. He is a steadfast practitioner of agape, the universal love for mankind. Katara is different. She is intense both in her passions and her hatreds. Unlike Aang, she is not mercurial. While Aang leaves the group to die in the desert after Appa disappears and then blows up at them near the end of the show when they expect him to kill the Fire Lord, Katara just lets her pain simmer. Even though, when he's trying to convince her to not go after the man who killed her mother, one of the few times he expresses any sort of empathy toward her feelings, and it's in a negative context. Even though in this instance he compares his grief about losing his people to hers about her mother, they're not really the same thing. Aang and Katara are different people who handle grief differently. I don't blame Aang for not knowing this. He's a child. He's like 12. But we, as the audience, as adults, rewatching the show, should know better. Aang reacts vividly when he learns his people died, but he does not carry that grief around with him. It comes back at points, but only in more cathartic terms, such as when he's with the Guru in episode 219. In other words, he performs his grief in a more socially acceptable manner, compared to Katara, who is not that perfect, who is flawed, and who cannot conceal or compartmentalize her pain that easily. As much as some fans mock her for how much she talks about her mother, every time she does, it's motivated and it's raw, and it's a true expression of her grief, and she should not be penalized for that. Even though Katara is like this, she gives Zuko another chance. And that means a lot to him. He knows how much this resonates, not just because of where he is in his position of trying to turn around his life, but also because he knows how intensely Katara feels these things. Yes, he does end up betraying her trust, but he is disgusted by that choice. His dissatisfaction after he arrives back in the Fire Lord's good graces is not just because of the choice he made, but because of the people he betrayed. Uncle Iroh, of course, has always been there for him, but Katara had no reason to be there for him. She had no reason to give him another chance, and yet she did, and he let her down. Because of this, he is willing to go to extreme lengths to earn Katara's forgiveness, even though he has already redeemed himself, even though the rest of Team Avatar has already forgiven him. Meanwhile, Katara's journey throughout the show is about overcoming the darkness inside herself and coming to terms not just with the death of her mother, but how the death of her mother forced her to shoulder far more burdens than any child should have to. Her relationship with Zuko helps her accomplish this. We know what she thinks of him at basically every point of the show. We know how her opinion of him changes. We can track that throughout the show. But what does she think about Aang as a person, not just as the Avatar? She thinks he's sweet, and her opinions toward him are mostly positive, but we're given very little information about what the relationship is like, romantically or otherwise. A very large portion of their relationship is just about Katara having to clean up the messes Aang's flaws get them into, such as when they're in the desert, and Katara has to glue the team together and make sure they don't die, or even when Aang is trying to learn earthbending, and he fails miserably, and who has to try and take care of him? Katara. Think about episode 309, the one right before they invade the Fire Nation. Everyone is stressed, everyone has to prepare for this great battle, but Aang, in his own anxiety, does not really consider what everyone else is going through. And while everyone suffers because of Aang, and everyone does not get to relax before the battle and instead has to devote all their energies to helping him, despite that, Katara is the one who again has to shoulder most of the burden. And what does getting together with Aang accomplish for her character? Not really anything. All it does is allow for Aang to get with the girl of his dreams, demonstrating that, at least romantically, he has not grown from the person he was at the beginning of the show. There is also the issue of equality. I really like the relationship between Katara and Zuko because both partners are about at the same level, emotionally and intellectually. Sure, they can be impulsive. Sure, they can make foolish decisions. They're still teenagers, but they're intelligent, capable, mature teenagers. They can look outside themselves and consider what would be best for those around them. A lot has been made of the age difference between Aang and Katara, with him only being 12 at the start of their respective journeys, while Katara is 14. This is only 2 years, which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot, but considering they're so young, it is a lot, because it means Katara is fully a young woman, while Aang is still a boy, he's still a child. But that's not the full story. If Aang was still the same age, but he was mature for his age, and he understood Katara, and didn't just idealize her, I would have less of a problem with this relationship. But Katara is the one who is mature for her age. Even though she is Sokka's younger sister, she acts like his older sister. And she acts as the surrogate mother for the entire group. Though she is imperfect, she is trying the best she can. And that means she bottles up a lot of anger. Zuko is the only one who acknowledges the legitimacy of that anger and tries to help her deal with it. And aside from Uncle Iroh, there is no one, in terms of the characters we know and see, who understands Zuko's suffering more than Katara. She's willing to listen and empathize. Now, that does not mean she doesn't tease him. She is comfortable teasing him because of the deep level of understanding that exists between them. They're both willing to support one another. This comes from the equality in their relationship. If Katara's having a breakdown, who do you think can help her, really help her? Aang, someone who doesn't even really understand why she wants revenge? Or Zuko, someone who is actively willing to listen to her? This brings us to the final significant reason to support the relationship between these two, and that is the extent of the similarities between them. They are both relatively serious. Now, this does not mean they cannot be involved in comedy bits, but the comedy is more in what happens to them, not comedy that they deliberately try to make happen. I don't want to say they're the only ones who suffer, because that's not true, but they're the only ones who have to think outside of themselves. Zuko has to reconsider his entire ideology, and Katara has to try and balance her desire to do good with her desire to take care of those around her, and balance all of this with the raw darkness inside her. True, Aang does spend a very long time contemplating whether he should kill the Fire Lord, but that's more a case of one instance than a case of him having to question his entire belief system. After Aang decides that yes, I am going to accept my duties as the Avatar in Season 1, his struggles are more in terms of, oh, how do I relate to these expectations as the Avatar, and not a matter of his personal beliefs being called into question. I might talk about this in a future video, but Katara and Zuko also have similar views on grief. Not everyone responds to it identically. Aang moves past it, more or less. Sokka and Toph bury it, but Katara and Zuko cannot stop thinking about it. It's not just that their mothers are gone, but that their mothers being gone forced them to take on burdens that, no, they don't complain about, but nonetheless cause a lot of stress and pressure on them. Because of all this, a relationship between these two just seems more promising than a relationship between Aang and Katara. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Avatar. It's a brilliant show, one of the best ever, and it's easier to watch than ever now that it's on Netflix. There's nothing innately wrong with Zutara not happening, but it would have been really compelling to see them try to make that relationship work romantically, whereas the bond between Aang and Katara romantically is thin at best. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.